On the last episode of the Keepsake box. David finishes his breakfast and I walk over to retrieve his dishes. He stands up with a smile and wipes his mouth with the napkin that I've placed adjacent to his plate. Without provocation, David backhands me across the face. Instinctively, I put my arms up to protect myself against the subsequent blows that seem inevitable. Outsmarting me, as he often does, David punches me in the stomach, causing me to fall onto the floor. I know better than to challenge him, so I decide to remain on the floor and wait for the attack to be over. I guess he's running late because he simply steps over me as if I'm a log on the ground. David adjusts his tie and checks his watch. He retrieves his jacket from the coat rack and opens the door. I feel the brisk air on my back, alerting me that my shirt has somehow been ripped in the scuffle. Knowing that the attack is over, I turn to face David. His face is calm, content even. Without any inflection in his tone, he says, "When I talk, I expect you to listen." I guess I was more transparent than I thought. I look at David and give him a stiff smile. "Yes, sir," I said. For some reason, I'm expecting a reciprocal grin. Living up to his ability to surprise me, David simply tells me to clean up the mess. He exits. I sit on the floor for a while, making sure that David isn't going to surprise me and double back. Once I'm content in thinking that he's gone, I walk over to the window. Peering through the blinds, I see that David's car is no longer in the driveway. I breathe a sigh of relief and collapse onto the chair. For a few minutes, I think about how different things should have been. Chapter 2, I Feel Ugly. Narrated by Shandora Warren. Music by Epidemic Sound. I was born in the early 80s, the older of Mom's two children. I like to say that I was a born leader, but truthfully, I was forced to be independent at a very early age. Mom had me when she was 15, and I spent my early years living with her and my grandmother. According to Grandma, my father was some heathen, and we didn't talk about him. I've asked Mom about him on a few occasions, but she told me that it was stupid for me to inquire. Mom had a way of doing that. She would take something that was completely natural and make you feel insecure about it. That's how she operated. I remember when I started growing breasts. At the time, I felt that it was an awkward period for all girls. Now, I'm not entirely sure. Most of the girls my age started developing breasts around the same time. I remember hearing them call their breasts bee stings. Other girls walked around proudly, and I wondered why they were so comfortable being too grown. It was easy to be too grown as far as Mom and Grandma were concerned. If you went outside without a jacket on a spring day, you were trying to show your body. Thus, you were being too grown. If you bent over and your shirt shifted even a little, you were being too grown. If anything jiggled when you walked, you were being too grown. I guess you get the idea. I learned that the only way to avoid being too grown was to stay out of the way. I didn't say too much, and I was careful not to attract too much attention. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. Besides, I didn't think I had a reason to attempt to be noticed. You have to understand the general way of thinking when I was growing up. I was always made aware of the fact that I wasn't the preferred shade of brown. My peers let me know that. My family let me know that. For some reason, it wasn't sufficient to refer to me as dark-skinned. They referred to me as black, as if their lighter skin made them of an alternate race. Rumor is, my family has a long history of picking mates based on their skin tone, opposed to other more important attributes. I can't prove that to be true, but I have several miserable family members. They all have light-skinned children, though. They were always very mean to me, and we never really associated with them much. They were the pretty red-bone girls. Grandma always said that they thought they were better than other people, but I wasn't one of those. I was Shelonda. I was Margaret's black grandbaby. I was Donna's ugly child. That's how the world saw me, and that's how I saw myself. Mom never called me ugly outright. However, she said everything but. I remember her saying that I was the type of girl that had to look up on herself. On the rare instances where I felt pretty good about myself, Mom was sure to let me know that I was unjustifiably confident. I remember getting ready for school and applying some tinted lip gloss. It was mostly clear with a slight tint. Mom told me to take it off because girls my color couldn't wear those shades. She always made sure to categorize me differently than the pretty girls, the light-skinned girls. Those things always hurt my feelings, but I valued her word. Mom was beautiful. I trusted that she was just doing what she thought was best for me. I appreciated her attempt to save me the embarrassment at school. Not that it mattered. I wasn't one of the girls that got a lot of attention. That was reserved for the pretty girls with pretty hair. It didn't help that I was made to wear dresses every day. Grandma was very religious. I know that sounds extreme present day, but that's how it was back then. That was life. And just like at home, I stayed out of the way at school. It's impossible to get picked on if no one knows you exist, right? I found out the hard way that that's not the case. It's true what they say. You may not remember a lot about someone, but you'll always remember how they made you feel. I remember sitting in class one day. I was in the 6th grade. One of my fellow classmates approached me and asked if I was related to the Boones. In fact, I was related to the Boones. They were amongst the light-skinned family members from which we were disassociated. Everyone always talked about how pretty the Boone girls were, so I was delighted at the possibility of someone suggesting that I look like them. "Are you related to the Boones?" he asked. Before I could respond, he blurted out, "The Baboons." He, along with several other classmates, erupted into laughter. There I was, thinking that he was saying that I looked like some of the prettier girls, and he was implying that I looked like a baboon. I can't describe the level of embarrassment that I felt that day. I haven't ever forgotten it. The crazy thing is, I didn't think I was ugly. I mean, I was dark, but I thought I had decent features. When you think you lack in certain areas, you're always observant of those things as they relate to others. Because I felt ugly, I exerted a considerable amount of energy looking at the facial features of others. I looked at the girls who were pretty by most standards. I studied their faces. Many of them had facial features that weren't much different than mine. That's when I realized that for some people, attractiveness was somehow tied into complexion and hair texture. I honestly didn't understand it, but I knew that's how it was. When I was in the 7th grade, I met a boy named Brandon. I was 12. Brandon had transferred from another school and immediately taken a liking to me. We had a couple of classes together, and he always sat next to me. It wasn't unusual for boys to befriend me, but it was usual for their academic benefit. I was smart, a fact that all of my classmates were aware of. Occasionally, a boy would chat me up, but it would always result in him asking for notes or help with an assignment. I knew I was being used, but I guess I thought it might end up like the movies. You know, the movies where the popular boy befriends the unpopular girl, and against all odds, he falls in love with her. It never happened that way with me, though. The boy never fell in love with me. He used me, but Brandon was different. He talked to me every day and never expected anything in return. I liked that about him. A couple of months into us meeting, Brandon asked if I wanted to be his girlfriend. I was delighted. I didn't think Brandon was particularly attractive, but that didn't matter to me. I liked Brandon because Brandon liked me. No one had ever liked me before. I was ecstatic about the prospect of being a girlfriend. Brandon couldn't be my real boyfriend. Mom and Grandma would have blown a gasket if they had heard of such a thing. He was my school boyfriend. That's all he could be. He sat next to me in class, carried my books, and met me at my locker. That's all it took to be a boyfriend back then. Just as I was comfortably settling into my role as school girlfriend, Brandon told me that he couldn't be my boyfriend anymore. I was extremely confused. Brandon really seemed to like me. and I couldn't understand the sudden change in his behavior. I didn't ask any questions. I was scared that Brandon was going to say something that was going to hurt my feelings, so I let him break up with me without a rebuttal. I never made him take responsibility for the way he made me feel. I didn't even feel that I deserved that. A couple of days later, I found out that Brandon was dating Toya Boone. Yeah, my cousin Toya Boone. Toya was one of the pretty girls. She was light-skinned with good hair. All the boys liked her. Although Toya was considered to be pretty by the vast majority of the population, I never saw the appeal. She had a large flat nose and her bottom teeth were basically jumping onto each other. She also had forehead acne and random black spots that were the results of her recurring condition. Of course, I never told anyone that I felt that way. How could I? I figured I'd look audacious if I admitted that I didn't think she was pretty, but she wasn't. I became very skilled in the art of looking unaffected, and I didn't make any exceptions for the Brandon and Toya show. I watched Toya become the new me. Brandon carried her books and walked the halls with her. I passed them every day and pretended as if I didn't know them. I felt that everyone was expecting a reaction out of me, and I refused to give it to them. I refused to let anyone think that I was bothered. The fact is, I was very bothered. Even worse, I had no other choice but to draw a natural correlation. I was forced to feel that Brandon had chosen Toya because she was prettier. Seemingly, I would have been upset with him, but I wasn't. I was angry with Toya. In my mind, she knew he was my boyfriend, and even though she didn't acknowledge me, she knew that we were cousins. Why would she agree to be his girlfriend? I also blame myself. Maybe he wouldn't have broken up with me if I had more to offer. These are the things that we torture ourselves with when we don't feel that we are good enough. I blamed myself for every bad thing that happened to me. I found out later that Toya was having sex. I wasn't, of course. In my adult mind, I am now fully aware that Toya having sex likely played a part in Brandon's decision to date her instead. But in my 12-year-old mind, it was because I wasn't good enough. Deep down, I wonder if things would be better if I just started having sex. A few girls I knew were having sex and they all had boyfriends. Even though the thought crossed my mind, it didn't really seem like a legitimate reality. First of all, I was horribly shy. We were all in the same age range, but I was far less developed than most of my classmates. That disadvantage created a serious insecurity within me. Secondly, I didn't think it would be easy to find a boy that would be interested in having sex with me. I wasn't hugely popular amongst my male peers. As an adult, I'm fully aware that boys would have been lining up to take it if I was willing to give it away. But that was the mind of a 12-year-old girl, a 12-year-old who felt ugly. Third, I didn't have a lot of opportunity. Although Mom worked a lot, Grandma was retired and she was always somewhere close. Grandma watched me like a hawk. She often told me that she refused to let me do what Mom had done. Even though no one ever discussed what Mom did, I assumed that it was directly related to my conception. Grandma had me in church every Sunday, and she kept a close eye on me when we were there as well. If I went to the bathroom more than once, Grandma would tell me to sit down and stop trying to be seen. Unbeknownst to her, I wanted to do anything but be seen. At 12 years old, the damage had already been done. I felt ugly, and I thought that my best option was to stay out of the way. That was my reality. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow Shenny Tells a Story on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in purchasing books by Shandora Warren, they're all available on Amazon. I sincerely appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for helping me to create the world that I want to see. Oh yeah, you're welcome. Shine, little girl.